Countless cultivators rushed to tell each other, one by one. The cultivators of the spirit realm, the elders and giants of various forces were all alarmed, and they all ended their retreat, stepped out of the dojo, and looked up at the sky. And those self-righteous geniuses also looked up. The spiritless is extremely mysterious. The soul-devouring sect is a hidden sect in the spirit realm, with power spanning several domains. Whenever it comes out in a big way, it will set off a bloody storm. But they are not the most mysterious one. The heavenly secret sect that created the spirit list is the real top-ranked hidden sect in the spirit realm. No one knows how they got the information, and no one knows who their disciples are. Correspondingly, no one knows how powerful they are. The cultivators of the spirit realm only know one thing. That is, the heavenly secret sect has existed in the spirit realm for countless years, and it is extremely mysterious. Even the holy emperor of the spirit realm dare not provoke it. Therefore, when the sky and earth change color, the heavenly secrets turn, the spiritual list is about to come out, and the pressure covers the middle sky of the spiritual domain. These spiritual domains, the most elite cultivators, are all startled and attracted, looking at the spiritual list in the air, with unparalleled expectations in their eyes. I don't know who will be on the spiritual list this time, just as they expect. Buzz. In the air, the spiritual energy surges, and the list emerges. 100 names, from top to bottom, are arranged in order. This is the ranking of the old list in the past. Among them, Yu Baifeng's name is surprisingly ranked 9th. In addition, Su Ziyu, who once met Gu Changqing and others in Xuanhuang's secret realm, is also on the list. Everyone looked at those familiar names. Finally, their eyes couldn't help but look at the top of the old list. Wu Shenyu. This is a legend in the spiritual domain. She is known as the most beautiful woman of the young generation in the spirit realm. But at the same time, she is also recognized as the most beautiful person of the young generation in the spirit realm. Her ranking on the spirit list was not ranked by the Tianji sect after finding out the news. Instead, she was already famous in the spirit realm before the spirit list was updated. Since she entered the king realm, she began to challenge the geniuses who were on the spirit list one by one. Almost every time she broke through a realm, her ranking on the spirit list would skyrocket. Until 3 years ago, she topped the spirit list. So far, the spirit list has changed its ranking more than 10 times, but not once has her ranking been shaken. After a brief recollection of the legendary past of Luo Shenyue, everyone's eyes could not help but fall back on the other names on the list. I wonder how many people will be on the list, and how many will be off the list this time. Just as they were guessing, Buzz, the name that was originally ranked 22nd on the spirit list, suddenly jumped. It flashed directly backwards, directly entered the 22nd place. Incredible. Which force cultivated this genius? Everyone was in a commotion. But before they could come back to their senses, the original 22nd place genius on the spiritual list did not fall to the 23rd place, but directly jumped to the 24th place. Even the rankings of the dozens of people behind him were directly squeezed back by 2 places. But everyone present was stunned, falling 2 places. 2 geniuses who entered the top 30 of the spiritual list appeared in one breath, under the shocked gaze of everyone. A new name, which was extremely unfamiliar to the cultivators in the central part of the spiritual realm, appeared on the spiritual list. 23rd place, Gu Yongxi, Hanqin Empire. Gu Yongxi, who is this? Where is the Hanqin Empire? Just when everyone was confused, above Gu Yongxi's ranking, another new name appeared. No! 22, Zhang Liangxin, Hanqin Empire. Now, everyone couldn't calm down. One Hanqin Empire was fine. Now there was another genius from the Hanqin Empire that no one had ever heard of. What's the situation with these two? Just when everyone was confused, suddenly, there was an unstoppable exclamation from the crowd. You guys look at the sky. The first place on the spirit list seems to be flashing. What? What crazy are you talking about? Who can take away Luo Shenyue's first place? Hearing this exclamation, everyone's first reaction was disbelief, but they couldn't help but look up at the sky. But they just happened to see that the name of Luo Shenyu, the first place on the spirit list, was slowly erased, causing the ranking of all the geniuses on the spirit list to be directly lowered by 1 place. They all took a breath of cold air involuntarily. With unbelievable eyes, a light emerged. What is going on here? This time, even Luo Shenyue's first place on the spirit list was taken away by someone else. Everyone was stunned. They stared at the blank space at the first place on the spirit list, unconsciously grasping their own robe sleeves and waiting with bated breath. Until first place, Gu Changqing, Hanqin Empire. Silence. A long silence until the spiritual list was dispersed. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth returned to calm, and the boundless sea of clouds stopped surging. The cultivators present gradually came back to their senses, but the waves in their hearts still could not be calmed down, and those giants and geniuses who were shocked by the change of the spiritual list started to act at the first time. Go check it out. Check to see who this Hanqin Empire is. Go! That day, the entire central part of the spiritual domain was boiling and restless. Even Yue Baifeng was shocked by the news, and various forces sent people to investigate Gu Changqing and the situation of the Hanqin Empire. Among them was the hidden family in the central part of the spiritual domain, the Su family. However, just when the Su family's people were about to leave the family to find out about the situation of the Hanqin Empire, they were stopped by their young lady. No need to check, Su Zhu said softly. There was also a strong sense of shock in her eyes. When the news of the change of the spiritual list came, she was in retreat and came out to take a look. But she never expected to see the news that Gu Changqing and others were on the spiritual list in the Xuanhuang secret realm that day. She already knew that Gu Changqing and others had extraordinary talents, far beyond the reach of ordinary people. But she never thought their talents were really so terrifying. She tried to calm down her shock, looked at the puzzled family members, and said in a deep voice, "I know the origins of these people. They should be members of the Han Empire and the Gu family. As for the Han Empire, it is just a small country located in the southern part of the spiritual domain." What? The southern part of the spiritual domain. How can such a level of genius come out of such a place? When the Su family heard Su Ziu's word, they were all a little stunned, wondering if they had heard it wrong. The southern part of the spiritual domain? What is that place? The poorest place in the entire spiritual domain. There is a Tianhuang realm sitting in the poor and remote place that dares to call itself a holy land. Such a place can produce a genius who is on the spiritual list, which can be described as terrifying. There was not even a person from the south on the spiritual list before. Now, there is actually a number 1 on the spiritual list, and 2 people in the top 30 on the spiritual list. But seeing the serious look of their young lady, the Su family also understood. My young lady is no longer joking. It's really incredible. The people of the Su family sighed in disbelief. At the same time, in the middle of the spirit realm, in the mansion of the Luo family, an ancient family with a long history in the spirit realm, there was an even more shocking scene. The eldest lady of the Luo family, Luo Shenyu, has dominated the spirit list for many years. In the past years, the spirit list has also experienced several changes, but their eldest lady has always firmly held the first place, and the Luo family is also proud of it. It's not just because of Luo Shenyu's ranking. More importantly, unlike the previous spirit list prodigies, it was the Tianji Tower that was on the list first, and the world recognized the other party's combat power later, Luo Shenyu. The Tianji Tower has not yet ranked her on the spirit list. She has already defeated the prodigies on the spirit list one by one, from low to high. In the past 100,000 years in the spirit realm, the first and only person who truly relied on his own ability to get on the first place on the spirit list. But now, this honor was taken away by someone. And the person who took it away was someone they had never heard of, Gu Changqing. All the children of the Luo family were staring at Gu Changqing's name on the spirit list in the air, very indignant. However, they were not worried. The young lady has been in seclusion for the past 2 years. Comprehending the family's supreme skills, she has never walked outside and has never taken action again. It is reasonable that Tianji Tower underestimated the young lady's strength. However, once the young lady comes out of seclusion, the first place on the spirit list will definitely be taken back by the young lady. A group of children of the Luo family thought so, and they could only think so. Each of them subconsciously turned back and looked in the direction of the Luo family's ancestral land, with expectations in their eyes. They all hoped that their young lady could come out of seclusion today, and it seemed as if it had heard the voices of the Luo family's children, just as they were praying. Boom! In the Luo family's ancestral land, a brilliant beam of light rose up. An extremely cold aura spread from the Luo family's ancestral land and spread towards the Luo family's mansion. All those who came into contact with the Luo family cultivators, regardless of their realm, felt a chill from the instinct of life, which made them shiver involuntarily. But they were not afraid. Instead, they all looked at the light column in the ancestral land with fanatical eyes. There, a girl with a sword, wearing silver armor, with a beautiful appearance, but with a heroic spirit and a transcendent temperament, was hanging in the air with her eyes slightly dimmed. She stood there, like a sad moon, which could make the world become desolate and cold. This girl with a sword was none other than Miss Luo, the former number 1 on the spiritual list, Luo Shenyu. I feel that the outside world is very noisy. What happened to make you so excited? The children of the Luo family looked at Luo Shenyu with boundless fanatical admiration. After hearing Luo Shenyu speak, they looked at each other. Finally, a maid who had been following Luo Shenyu for many years said cautiously, "Miss, the spiritual list has changed, and the ranking has changed. Spirit list changes." What's so surprising about this? Luo Shenyu opened her eyes. With a puzzled look in her eyes, the novel was taken from the Rollies website. Close where you're reading it and support us on our website for more free novels. The maid hesitated for a moment, but still said honestly, "Miss, this time the spiritual list changed. Your ranking was pushed down to the 2nd place. The newcomer is an unknown person named Gu Changqing, who was born in the Han Empire and whose specific origins are unknown." What? Hearing the words of the maid, Luo Shenyu couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise, and those Luo family children hurriedly bowed their heads, not daring to breathe. They were afraid that their young lady would get angry and take it out on them. Although the young lady was usually very gentle to them, even to the servants, she was very calm. But the first place on the spirit ranking was taken away, which had never happened before. Who knows if the young lady would go berserk? But the next second, everyone was dumbfounded, because Luo Shenyu was not angry, but smiled in surprise. Ha! Good news. There was no frustration or shame in the girl's eyes, but a surprise that could not be hidden. I have been in seclusion for 2 years. Isn't it because there are no opponents outside and it's really boring? Now there is such a person, which makes my 2 years of seclusion not in vain. It's just right that there is someone who can arouse my interest. Luo Shenyu became more and more happy as she spoke, and her eyes became brighter and brighter. She looked directly at the maid and raised her hand and pointed. You, go and inform the family. Let them find out as quickly as possible where the genius named Gu Changqing is from and where he is now. After finding out, you can tell me. I will go to the Han Qin Empire immediately. See what Brother Gu is capable of. Luo Shenyue said. She couldn't wait any longer. Spirit ranking. She didn't care about that at all. Whether she challenged the spirit ranking Tianzhao in the past or wanted to challenge Gu Changqing now, her goal had never changed. She only wanted one thing. That is, to fight to support herself, to hone herself in the battle, and to seek an evenly matched opponent. And now, this Gu Changqing is her target, Luo Shenyue. I hope this Brother Gu won't let me down too much. After this day, the entire central part of the spirit realm was boiling, and all forces took action to search for Gu Changqing and the location of the Han and Qin empires. But the efficiency was naturally not as fast as expected. But there are always some sects with special circumstances. For example, the Daluo Palace driven by hatred. Daluo Palace. In Yu Baifeng's palace, in the southern part of the spiritual domain, the Gu family of the Han Qin Empire killed my sister. Yu Baifeng looked at the deacon of the Daluo Tiangong who bowed down at the steps and spoke with gritted teeth, replying to Yu's personal message. It is absolutely true. In addition, I also learned that the strength of the Gu family is extraordinary. Not long ago, they destroyed the Kanglin Holy Land, a power of the Emperor level. Oh, hearing this, Yu Baifeng's brows were all furrowed. Originally, he was going to act alone. In his opinion, no one in the southern part of the spiritual domain had the courage and strength to stop him. Yu Baifeng. But now he had to admit that his previous thoughts were a bit naive. The other party could even destroy the Kanglin Holy Land, which was obviously not something that an ordinary person could do, he alone. A person who had not yet achieved the Emperor realm was far from being the opponent of the other party, but fortunately, I can't do it. But if you ask the master to come out, everything will be fine. Yu Baifeng's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He immediately waved his hand to let the deacon go, and then rushed to his master's place, Gong Yu. After explaining his purpose, the palace master of Daluo Tiangong responded very straightforwardly. Yes, I will go with you then. I will definitely avenge your sister. The palace master of Daluo Tiangong said straightforwardly. Yu Baifeng is his most valued disciple, with extraordinary talent, and can be called the future pillar of Daluo Tiangong. After Yue Baifeng joined Daluo Tiangong, the palace master of Daluo taught her everything, and Yue Baifeng's performance did not disappoint him. What does it mean to be the 9th on the spirit list? The rankings of the descendants of several forces in the spirit realm, with Saint Emperor Giants on the spirit list, are all suppressed by Yue Baifeng. Such disciples should naturally be well protected. Moreover, the palace master of Daluo Tiangong is also worried that this matter will become Yue Baifeng's inner demon and affect his future practice. After all, that is his own sister. Therefore, this trip must be made, unless he wants to give up Yue Baifeng, the supreme genius. However, since the other party was able to destroy the Kanglin Holy Land, I think they will have some trump cards in hand. A lion must fight a rabbit with all its strength. When the time comes, I will let you Uncle Yulong go with me. Thank you, Master. Yue Baifeng became more and more excited when he heard this. The Uncle Yulong mentioned by the Daluo Palace Master is one of the deputy palace masters of the Daluo Palace. His cultivation is the same as that of the Daluo Palace Master. They are both powerful people in the late stage of the Divine Emperor realm. 2 Divine Emperors in the late stage, let alone destroying a force in the southern part of the spirit realm. Even slaughtering the southern part of the spirit realm can be done easily. On Yue Baifeng's side, he began to prepare manpower to avenge the Gu family. On the other side, in a void near the spirit realm, swoosh, a ghostly figure in a black robe suddenly stopped near the spirit realm. The eyes covered by the black robe suddenly raised up, and there was a misty light blue flame in the eyes, burning like a ghost fire, shuttle through the void. This is the strength that only a giant in the Divine Emperor realm can possess. At this moment, this Divine Emperor giant was staring at the spirit realm in front of him. After a moment, a figure was reflected in the light blue flame. If Gu Changqing was here, he would recognize at a glance that this figure was the face of the soul-devouring sect's soul-binding envoy whom he killed that day. However, behind this figure, a light blue ghost fire had already ignited in the soul-devouring sect. This means that this member has fallen. Interesting. I didn't expect that someone would dare to destroy the layout of my holy sect in this spirit realm. It's really audacious. Outside the void, the black-robed figure sneered. Immediately, his figure flashed and headed straight for the spiritual realm, falling rapidly like a comet. Behind him, the black robe fluttered like the wings of a big bird in the wind. The symbol of a death sickle flashed blood-colored patterns, which looked extremely creepy in the dark void. Spiritual domain, south. As the southern ceremony came to an end, all forces began to return. The news of the destruction of Kanglin Holy Land also began to spread gradually in the southern part of the spiritual domain, and correspondingly, the name of the Gu family also began to spread across millions of miles. Although limited by time, the reputation has not yet spread throughout the southern territory, but all major forces have received the news one after another. For example, Yehua Holy Land. This is one of the southern Holy Lands as famous as Kanglan, and it is also a Tianhuang level force. The disciple sent by Yuehua Holy Land for this southern ceremony is the top level Tianjiao, who has been carefully cultivated for many years by the Tianhuang ancestor of Yuehua Holy Land, in the eyes of the ancestor Yuehua. With his disciple taking action, even Yue Lingxuan of Kanglan Holy Land will not be an opponent. Therefore, after receiving his disciple, he has led the team back. The Yuehua Patriarch led the high-level officials of the Holy Land to greet the disciple who won the first prize in the Southern Grand Ceremony. However, when the Yuehua Patriarch and the high-level officials who stayed behind in the Holy Land left the Holy Land and saw the team sent by Yuehua to participate in the Southern Grand Ceremony, they were all shocked. Whether it was the Holy Son of Yuehua Holy Land or the several Divine King Realm elders who went with him, their expressions all looked quite dull. It was as if they had suffered a huge blow at the Grand Ceremony and had not yet recovered. This did something extraordinary happen at the Grand Ceremony. The Yuehua Patriarch was puzzled, but as the ancestor of the Holy Land, he quickly adjusted his mentality, coughed, and signaled his disciple to come back to his senses. Luoshan, what's wrong with you? With this expression, did you not win the Grand Ceremony this time? Hearing the master asking about the Southern Grand Ceremony, Luoshan, the saint of Yuehua, and the several God King elders behind him all came back to their senses. Thinking of the experience at the Sayang at the Southern Ceremony, especially the scene where Gu Chongqing slashed the Kanglan Patriarch with a sword and killed the soul-devouring cult messenger, he shuddered involuntarily and shook his head quickly. Master, I have never won the championship. Luoshan thought to himself, if he could win the championship from that peerless villain, he would not be the saint of Yuehua, and he would be qualified to sit in the position of the Yuehua Patriarch. But when the Yuehua Patriarch heard Luoshan's words, he saw that Luoshan had no guilt in his eyes, but he just felt unbelievable. Is the gap between him and the old ghost Kanglan really that big? They are both carefully trained disciples, but after his disciple lost to the Kanglan saint, he was so convinced that he didn't even feel guilty towards his master. Is the strength of Saint Kanglan so strong? Has she cultivated Kanglan's peerless magical power? Or has she mastered some secret of Kanglan? Is that what makes you so disheartened? Old ancestor Yuehua couldn't help but speak. With a harsh tone, Saint Kanglan. Disheartened, Luoshan looked up in confusion, looking at his master in a daze, and then realized that his master didn't know the situation of the Southern Ceremony. He shook his head and said hurriedly, Master, you misunderstood. I didn't behave like this because of Saint Kanglan. Saint Kanglan didn't rank at all in this battle. She's dead. What? Luoshan said repeatedly. What he said made old ancestor Yuehua dumbfounded. Saint Kanglan Yue Lingshan. This title, even old ancestor Yuehua has heard of. With a brother who is in the top 10 of the spirit list, she has to be polite to him even if he is the Emperor of Heaven. But now, Yue Lingxuan has died without saying a word. Is there no reaction from Kanglan Holy Land? No one knows who did it. I haven't received any news from Yuehua. If it wasn't for his own disciple who said this, Yuehua would have thought it was a complete fake news. Seeing his master's face full of disbelief, Luoshan smiled bitterly and bowed. Master, it's normal that Kanglan Holy Land didn't react, because it's not just Kanglan Saintess who was killed. Kanglan Holy Land was also destroyed. What? Now? Yuehua couldn't sit still anymore. Kanglan Holy Land is as famous as Yuehua, and the three Holy Lands have similar power. If someone can destroy Kanglan, it means that the other party also has the means to destroy Yuehua Holy Land. How can Yuehua Patriarch remain calm? Fortunately, after listening to Luoshan's next narration, Yuehua Patriarch gradually calmed down. From the information Luoshan said, the Gu family and Kanglan Holy Land had a grudge, which led to the disaster the day before. Feng should not be the kind of bloodthirsty and murderous force, which made Yuehua Patriarch relieved. However, Gu family, what is their origin? There was doubt in Yuehua Patriarch's eyes. The heyday of the Gu family has been too long away from now. In the long years, even the most glorious legends will fade, not to mention the southern part of the spiritual domain. Even if the scope is expanded to the entire spiritual domain, there may be only a handful of people who can remember the name of the Gu family. Yuehua Patriarch was naturally unfamiliar with the Gu family. However, he did not dwell on it for too long. After all, although the Gu family is powerful, in Yuehua Patriarch's view, whether the Gu family can survive for a long time is still a question mark. Kanglan Holy Land is a small matter, but the brother behind the Kanglan Saintess is not easy to provoke. With the temperament of the Dalo Tiangong, the master of the palace, it is estimated that it will not be long before the revenge of the Dalo Tiangong will fall on the Gu family. And the eyes of the Yuehua Patriarch narrowed slightly, and his eyes subconsciously looked in the direction of the Hanshin Empire, with a gleam of brilliance in his eyes. According to the news sent back by his disciple, Gu Chongqing also killed a soul-binding envoy of the soul-devouring sect in the end. The threat of the soul-devouring sect is stronger than that of the Dalu Tiangong. The momentum of the Gu family's rise is very strong, but whether it is a star that shines forever or a comet that disappears in a flash depends on whether they can survive this level. If they can't survive, then everything will be over. All the glory will vanish, and you and I can rest assured. We can even divide up the forces of the Kanglan Holy Land in the past, and take back the Mengyuquan. Ancestor Yuehua said, twisting his beard, his eyes full of expectation. What if they survive? Luoshan couldn't help but ask in a low voice, survived. Ancestor Yuehua shook his head, but his eyes were not optimistic. Dalo Tiangong, soul-devouring sect. Any one of these two would be enough to plow the southern part of the spirit realm, even if there is Gu Changqing, an anomaly. How can an anomaly resist the general trend? However, thinking of what his disciples said, that Gu Changqing even killed the messenger of the soul-devouring sect, in his decisive and strong style, he was a little worried. Maybe this Gu family really has some ability. Anyway, if he can really survive, then we don't have to worry. Just be at ease and submit to him. On the contrary, those giant forces in the central part of the spiritual domain who are domineering should be worried. As the Yuehua patriarch said, he smiled slightly, and there was a hint of gloating in his eyes. After all, even the attacks of the Daluo Tiangong and the soul-devouring sect can be withstood. Such a force, even if it is not compared with the real Saint Emperor force, the gap will not be too big. Similar conversations were staged in various forces in the south as time went by. For a time, the Gu family became the cusp of the entire southern part of the spiritual domain. So much so that even when the news of the update of the spiritual list reached the south, it did not attract much attention from the south. After all, the spiritual list and the cultivators in the southern part of the spiritual domain have never been related. Even when the south was at its peak, there was no genius who could be on the list compared with the spiritual list. They care more about the next outcome of the Gu family. However, when the list of the spiritual ranking was announced, these people could not sit still, because they found that the evergreen god king of the Gu family was ranked first on the spiritual ranking. This is the pride of the spiritual ranking. The god king of the Gu family is not an old monster, but a demon young enough to be on the spiritual ranking. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw the ranking of the spiritual ranking, even the southern emperor realm, such as Yuehua patriarch, who was not optimistic about the Gu family, could not help but become excited. But their excitement did not last too long, because it was almost at the same time as the ranking of the spiritual. Ranking was transmitted to the southern part of the spiritual domain. On this day, there were hundreds of powerful auras on the sea of clouds in the southern part of the spiritual domain, passing through the sky, and one after another of the terrifying and ferocious spirit boats broke through the sea of clouds and arrived in the south, pointing directly at the Han and Qin empires. The catastrophe of the Gu family is here, above the sea of clouds. A number of spiritual boats broke through the air, and boundless evil spirits spread, making countless cultivators in the southern part of the spiritual domain below feel that breathing has become difficult. On the leading spiritual boat, a flag shone, with the 4 characters of Daluo Tiangong written on it, emitting boundless spiritual light. Not only did it indicate the identity of the visitor, the flag itself was also an imperial treasure. At this moment, it illuminated the skylight in all directions, allowing the spiritual energy in a radius of 10,000 feet to gather and bless the spiritual boat, making it more magical and powerful. With this spiritual boat as the leader, 9 spiritual boats were lined up behind it. On each spiritual boat, there was a Tianhuang and several Xuanhuang realm masters sitting in charge in the southern part of the spiritual domain. He was already the real top, a master qualified to create a holy land. In this team, he could only be considered an average level, just commanding a spiritual boat and doing some auxiliary work. Is this the foundation of Daluo Tiangong? In the southern part of the spiritual domain, countless cultivators were dumbfounded. Such a lineup really exceeded the limits of their imagination. 9 heavenly emperors, dozens of mysterious emperors. Such strength is enough to sweep all forces in the southern part of the spiritual domain. But it seems that this impact is not strong enough. Just below, countless southern cultivators were shocked on the spiritual boat with the flag of Daluo Tiangong. Yu Baifeng took the lead, walked out of the cabin, and stood beside the flag. And then 2 old men walked out of it. Their demeanor was as solemn as a mountain. It was the second palace master of Daluo Tiangong, the Daluo palace master and the Yulong deputy palace master. 2 giants in the late stage of the divine emperor realm. And there are 2 of them at once. Everyone in the south was shocked. Is this the strength of the giants in the spiritual domain, compared with the great central sects, like Daluo Tiangong? Are forces like Yuehua Holy Land and Kanglan, Holy Land worthy of being called Holy Lands? They had heard rumors before that when Gu Changqing destroyed Kanglan, Holy Land, he was accompanied by a woman who looked like a divine emperor, but given the current situation. So what if there really is a divine emperor? The revenge team invited by Yue Baifeng also has divine emperors, and they are 2 divine emperors in the late stage. The Gu family is finished. The Yuehua patriarch stood in the Holy Land, watching the mighty spirit boat team in the sky, flying towards the direction of the Han and Qin empires, shaking his head slightly, sighing. This Gu family rose quickly, but fell even faster. Before they could enjoy their glory for a few days, they were about to be removed from the spirit realm on the spirit boat. Yue Baifeng was extremely excited, wishing he could kill the Gu family immediately and kill the entire Gu family. As for the fearful eyes of the southern cultivators below, Yue Baifeng just wanted to sneer. 2 divine emperors scared them. This time he came to take revenge. He invited more than 2 divine emperors. Yue Baifeng turned around and looked at the cabin of the main spirit boat. His master and uncle came out to command the spirit boat forward. But in the cabin, there was still an old senior who had not appeared. That was the trump card of their team. It was his fiancée, Hua Lianyi, who invited him. an elder from the Hua family. Although the strength of this Hua family elder was not as strong as the Saint Emperor, but the Daluo Palace Master and the Jade Dragon Divine Emperor had to be respectful in front of this old man. Just because the other party's realm had reached the perfection of the Divine Emperor. One Divine Emperor was perfect. Two Divine Emperors were in the late stage. In addition, the Tianhuang realm elders of their family were invited by Yue Baifeng's other friends. Such a lineup made Yue Baifeng's inner confidence swell to the extreme. Gu Changqing. Let's use the death of you and all the members of the Gu family to commemorate Ling Shuang. Boom! With murderous intent in his heart, Yue Baifeng followed the spirit boat brigade across the sky and soon arrived above the Han-Qin Empire. At this time, the Han-Qin Empire was already trembling with fear, as if facing a great enemy. The forces of the Han-Qin Empire were all terrified to the extreme. They were afraid that Yue Baifeng and others would settle accounts with them. But fortunately, the fleet of Daluo Tiangong did not stay here at all, and went directly to Jianglan City where the Gu family was located, which made these forces feel relieved from the bottom of their hearts. The Zheng family could not help but feel relieved. Originally, they were worried that they would be implicated because they were the in-laws of the Gu family. Now it seems that he was overthinking. Daluo Tiangong is worthy of being called Daluo Tiangong. A giant level power is magnanimous. It has a vision. Yes, this is the giant power that is truly worthy of admiration. Unlike the Gu family, even if they have an evergreen god king, they are still petty. Such indiscriminate killing. Isn't this bringing disaster upon the family? All the Zheng family members were gloating. They still remembered the shame of the Zheng family being driven out of Jianglan City by Gu Changqing. Not to mention, the Gu family's cold attitude towards the Zheng family members at the previous southern ceremony also made them feel uneasy. Sister, you can't escape this death after all. You thought you married a good man, but you never thought that you would be killed. Zheng Baiwei felt a little cold in the heart. Not to mention Zhang Yunshan. He had always used his daughter as a tool. Gu Changqing had been indifferent to the Zheng family before. It would be a lie to say that he had no hatred in his heart. It was just because of Gu Changqing's terrifying strength, seeing the Gu family in great trouble. He felt as happy as Zhang Baiwei, especially when he thought of the miserable ending that the once arrogant Gu Changqing would face next. Zhang Yunshan felt that all the humiliation he had suffered before was paid off. On the contrary, God King Zhang sighed imperceptibly as he looked at the fleet going away. Although he was humiliated by Gu Changqing, but compared with this humiliation, Gu Changqing's experience at this moment made him feel more sad. I thought that after entering the realm of God King, I could travel across Han and Qin, travel across the south, and take revenge. But now, look at Gu Changqing, who is even stronger than me, and he is about to be suppressed by the God Emperor Giant. God King Zhang did not feel the pleasure of revenge, but felt a little sad. What's the matter with becoming a God King? In front of the real giants? We are just ants. He sighed with regret. Before this, he actually had some regrets. Regretted that the situation with the Gu family had reached this point. The Zheng family had lost the opportunity to make friends with the Gu family forever. But now, looking at the Daluo Tiangong spirit boat that broke through the clouds, he felt a little fortunate. If he really reconciled with the Gu family, then today would not only be a disaster for the Gu family, but also the day of the extinction of his Zheng family. It's a pity. If Gu Changqing hadn't died here, he might have become a giant in the future. And his 2 children. What a pity. What a pity. The Zheng family didn't care about the lament of the old God King. Zhang Yunshan even took a group of Zheng family executives to the Gu family to witness the demise of the Gu family with their own eyes. In fact, there are not a few forces that think like the Zheng family executives. They are not the same as Gu family feuds, such as Yuehua Holy Land, are purely for the purpose of confirming the news as soon as possible. After confirming the destruction of the Gu family, they will directly arrange personnel to take over the sphere of influence left by the Gu family, or in other words, the sphere of influence left by the Kanglan Holy Land. The people of Daluo Tiangong are also happy to see this scene. In their view, the more people come, the greater the deterrent power brought by their destruction of the Gu family. Daluo Tiangong wants to let these people in the south and even the people in the spirit realm know. Anything related to his Daluo Tiangong is not something they can provoke. Looking at the outline of Jianglan City gradually appearing on the horizon in the distance, behind Yue Baifeng, the eyes of the emperors, the mysterious emperors, and even the 2 palace masters of Daluo Tiangong are all shining. After today, the Gu family will be removed from the list, and the entire spirit realm must know that anyone related to my Daluo Tiangong must not be offended. Han-Qin Empire, around Jianglan City. All forces gathered at this moment, and seeing the spirit boat fleet of Daluo Tiangong approaching in the distance, they all stopped their steps wisely. If they continued to move forward, they would enter the battlefield. They came to see the end of the Gu family. They didn't want to go to hell with the Gu family. But among these stopped forces, there was a beautiful figure who never stopped. If Gu Changqing was here, he would recognize at a glance that this beautiful figure was not someone else, but Fairy Lu, one of the 2 pavilion masters of Xianyan Pavilion, who had met once at the southern ceremony. At this moment, Fairy Lu had changed into a green skirt and removed her pearl hairpins. She looked like a casual cultivator, but her appearance was more beautiful and refined. Her beautiful eyes looked at Jiangling City in the distance, with only determination. After receiving the news that Daluo Tiangong was approaching Jiangling City, she resolutely left Xianyan Pavilion and came to support the Gu family. Although Fairy Lu also knew that her strength was meaningless in front of the army of Daluo Tiangong, anyone who came out of the spirit boat could kill her thousands of times instantly. But this was her choice. If the Gu family had not intervened at the southern ceremony, Fairy Lu did not know what would have happened to Xianyan Pavilion. But just because of the arrogant attitude of the God King of the Yanlong dynasty, Fairy Lu and her disciples, this team of Xianyan Pavilion monks, will inevitably have a miserable ending. Fairy Lu dare not forget this kindness. So, after returning to Xianyan Pavilion, she handed over the affairs of the pavilion to Fairy Qin and imprisoned Bai Yueling in the pavilion to prevent her disciple from sneaking out to die. After doing all this, she rushed towards Jiangling City with the determination to die. Just when Fairy Lu saw that she was about to arrive at Jiangling City, buzz! A space crack suddenly appeared in the sky above Jiangling City. They arrived here earlier than the team of Daluo Tiangong, which also made Fairy Lu slightly stunned. The crack opened, a girl with a sword and white plain clothes and a transcendent temperament stepped out, looked around, and looked puzzled. Is this where Gu Changqing is? The spiritual energy is so poor. This girl with a sword is naturally the former number 1 on the spiritual list, Luo Shenyue. At this moment, Luo Shenyue stood on the sea of clouds, overlooking Jiangling City below. Although her eyes were puzzled, the information obtained by the family must be true. That Gu Changqing was the genius of the Gu family in Jiangling City. Immediately, Luo Shenyue spoke in a deep voice, and her voice spread under the blessing of spiritual power, resounding throughout Jiangling City. Young Master Gu Changqing, are you in the city? Luo Shenyue is here to visit. As this voice sounded, the whole Jiangling City was in commotion. Many cultivators in Jiangling City were extremely nervous as the storm was coming and the Daluo Palace was approaching. They were so scared that they dared not breathe when they heard Luo Shenyue's voice from the sky. The whole Gu family looked up in surprise. Luo Shenyue. They knew that the Gu family had a great enemy coming this time. But there was no Luo Shenyue among them. Even Gu Changqing and others were a little confused. I'll go and take a look. Gu Changqing looked calm, took a step, and came into the air. He could feel that the opponent's realm was not low, and he had already entered the level of Xuanhuang perfection. Looking at the Gu family, apart from Xuanhuang, only he could deal with such an opponent. Who is the girl? I don't remember having any encounter with her. Right? Looking at the silver-armored girl on the sea of clouds, Gu Changqing asked, "Are you Gu Changqing?" Luo Shenyue stared at Gu Changqing in front of her, and couldn't help but admire from the bottom of her heart. She's not bad looking, Luo Shenyue said, wanting to draw her sword to challenge Gu Changqing, but she hadn't said the words of challenge yet. Boom! In the distance, a pressure as dark as the abyss of heaven came from the distance, pressing down all the way, so that the words that Luo Shenyue hadn't said were all suppressed. Who is it? Luo Shenyue looked up in astonishment. She directly used the Luo family's teleportation array to cross the space and come to Jiangling City. She knew nothing about the troubles that the Gu family would face, and she didn't care at all. She just wanted to fight with the person who replaced her, to see if the other party was qualified to replace her as the first on the spiritual list. That's all. At this moment, he could feel the terrifying aura of the powerful emperors and the giants of the emperor. Luo Shenyue was a little surprised. Don't worry. I'm not looking for you. Gu Changqing flashed and came directly to the air. Guang was calm. Looking into the distance, on the sea of clouds, 10 spirit boats rushed through the thick clouds, spreading the evil spirit that soared into the sky like a dark mountain, pressing down on the sky above Jiangling City, making it difficult for countless cultivators below to even breathe. On the spirit boats, one by one, the powerful emperors also released the fluctuations of their ki, and the terrifying pressure of the emperor gathered into a 5-colored canopy. Rising majestically in the sea of clouds, the power soared to the sky. The evil spirit also soared to the sky. This is the power of the Daluo Tiangong, the giant power of the god emperor. At the moment of appearance, there was no need to say anything more. Just this momentum was enough to make all the cultivators who were enemies with it tremble in fear. My god. The cultivators in Jiangling City were all dumbfounded. The strongest person they had seen in Jiangling City was the old god king of the Zhang family. At most, there would be one more young master of the Gu family, the god king Changqing. Even in dreams, I have never dreamed of so many emperor-level strongmen gathering in Jiangling City. What is a desperate situation? This is a desperate situation. Even the Xuan emperor, who had been hiding in the dark in the Gu family mansion, frowned at this moment. She had already reminded Gu Changqing she could take the core members of the Gu family away first, or let Gu Changqing take the children of the Gu family away first, and she would cover the rear. In short, eggs should not be put in one basket. There are too many people coming from the Daluo Tiangong. She alone can definitely handle it. Run. Do you think you can run away from the Daluo Tiangong's level of power? Xuan Emperor sighed slightly, looking up in the air, watching the 2 main and deputy palace masters of the late God Queen period walking out of the Daluo Tiangong. Xuan Emperor also felt pressure in his heart. Forget it. At worst, I'll fight to the death. This emperor's life was originally given by him. Now, I'll give it back to him. Emperor Xuan didn't speak, but his eyes were already full of determination. However, he seemed to feel that the pressure the Gu family was facing was not enough. Just when the spirit boat of Daluo Tiangong suppressed Jiang Lincheng and surrounded the Gu family, above the sea of clouds, a dark and ink-black light column, exuding an endless, deadly atmosphere. Just looking at it from a distance makes people feel that their souls are about to be swallowed up, is falling from the sky. Boom! The dark light column landed with a bang. The momentum was so strong that the 10 spirit boats of Daluo Tiangong couldn't help but retreat a little. The emperors on the spirit boats looked at the light column, or more precisely, at a black-robed old man who slowly appeared on the light column. Their eyes were also extremely fearful. God Emperor Perfection, inside the Gu family mansion. Huan Huang's face was extremely ugly. She could feel that the realm of this black-robed old man who appeared was comparable to her when she was at her peak, and he was definitely a person who had reached the end of the God Emperor realm, soul-devouring ghost. You actually came here too? Does this Gu family have a grudge against you? Just when Xuan Huang felt daunted, in the main spirit boat of the Daluo Heavenly Palace, an old voice came, causing the cultivators in the entire Jianglan city, and even the cultivators, watching the battle around, to hold their breath. Immediately, a wave of energy that was no less than that of the black-robed old man came out from the spirit boat. This was actually another giant in the perfection realm of the God Emperor. Above the sea of clouds, another giant who had reached the state of divine emperor perfection appeared, releasing his aura, causing all the cultivators to hold their breath involuntarily. Those strong men from the southern Holy Land opened their eyes involuntarily. Ordinary southern cultivators could not recognize this giant. But how could they not recognize him? This old man was famous throughout the entire spiritual domain. He was the third elder of the Hua family, a rare Saint Emperor family in the spiritual domain, Divine Emperor of the Misty Moon. His realm might be just Divine Emperor Perfection, but he was cultivated by a Saint Emperor level giant. This Divine Emperor of the Misty Moon, who was at the state of Divine Emperor Perfection, was definitely much stronger than the Divine Emperors of the same realm. Daluo Tiangong actually invited this great Buddha to sit in charge. It's really incredible. Several strong men from the Holy Land could not help but swallow their saliva, looking at Jiang Lincheng and the direction of the Gu family's mansion. Their eyes were more sympathetic. With the Emperor of the Moon, the Gu family has no chance of survival. In addition, their eyes involuntarily turned to the black-robed old man called the Old Ghost by the Emperor of the Moon. The Old Ghost who devours the souls? This name is very unfamiliar to the southern cultivators. But if this name is replaced with Emperor of the Soul Devouring, the cultivators in the spiritual realm are quite familiar with it. This emperor was born in the soul-devouring sect. His fierce reputation is known to everyone in the entire spiritual realm. Forces like the Kanglan Holy Land have been destroyed countless times in his hands, and his most terrifying record was that he destroyed a sect called Mountain Sect 100 years ago. That sect. But there was a giant emperor in charge of the sect. But even so, it was still killed by the Emperor of the Soul Devouring. The whole sect was sacrificed to his soul-devouring mist with his blood, and even the God Emperor became the nourishment of the soul-devouring mist for this soul-devouring God Emperor. And his name, Soul Devouring, was also resounding throughout the spirit realm because of this. And today, this soul-devouring God Emperor actually came to the spirit realm again, listening to the question of the Emperor of Long Yu. The soul-devouring God Emperor sneered and looked at Jiang Lincheng with a bit of cruelty in his eyes. This person from the Gu family dared to kill the forces that had arranged with my soul-devouring sect, and also dared to kill the soul-binding envoy of my soul-devouring sect. If I didn't know, it would be fine. But since you know, how could you let him go easily? If you really let this Gu family go, where is the majesty of his soul-devouring sect? Listening to the cold words of the soul-devouring God Emperor. In the distance, the Jiang family members who were watching the battle from afar couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Earlier, they hated the Gu family's indifference to them, and regretted that they should not have been so harsh to Jiang Liangxin. But now, seeing that the Gu family was surrounded by enemies, and 4 great God Emperors wanted to settle accounts with the Gu family, in their hearts, they were only grateful and secretly happy, and Zhang Yunshan couldn't help but sneer. The young master of the Gu family, the Changqing God King, is really capable. Not only is he talented, but he is also good at causing trouble, just as he sneered. On the sea of clouds over there, Gu Changqing, seeing all the enemies coming, no longer paid attention to Luo Shenyue, who was in a state of confusion behind him, and took a step forward, and appeared in front of Jianglan City. Facing the crowd from a distance, he actually showed up on his own initiative. Seeing that Gu Changqing actually came out on his own initiative, the powerful people outside Jianglan City were all a little surprised. The soul-devouring emperor's eyes lit up after Gu Changqing appeared. He could feel that Gu Changqing had a very condensed divine thought hidden in his body, although he didn't know how much. If he could devour and refine Gu Changqing, his soul-devouring mist would definitely transform again, and it might be able to create a foundation for him to enter the Saint Emperor realm. Thinking of this, the soul-devouring emperor looked at Gu Changqing with a bit of burning greed. However, compared to him, Yue Baifeng was more excited. The moment Gu Changqing appeared, he was sure that it was the man in front of him who killed Yue Lingsheng. Immediately, Yue Baifeng's eyes were bloodshot. It was you who killed Lingsheng. Yue Baifeng shouted loudly, with murderous intent in his eyes. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Gu Changqing waved his hand and suppressed him. Bang! Gu Changqing directly pulled out a palm, and the mighty divine power exploded a sonic boom in the air. With terrifying force and unmatched momentum, in just a moment, he came close to Yue Baifeng, and Yue Baifeng's face was filled with fear. He never dreamed that Gu Changqing dared to attack at this point. In front of the two palace masters of Daluo Tiangong and countless emperor realm masters, everyone was stunned. No one expected that Gu Changqing would attack as soon as he said in the face of such a lineup, feeling the terrifying power that could not be resisted. Yue Baifeng did not even have time to withdraw and retreat, and was about to die on the spot. Fortunately, at this moment, on the spirit boat next to him, a Daluo Tiangong Tianhuang who was closest to Yue Baifeng reacted and attacked immediately. In an instant, he flashed in front of Yue Baifeng. How brave! He shouted in a low voice, and the spiritual power surged when he raised his hand, drawing a light seal, and fell towards Gu Changqing's palm. The light seal and the palm seal collided in midair, and in an instant, they blocked the palm seal's attack. Good. It's Elder Yunnan. All the strong men of Daluo Tiangong cheered, and Yue Baifeng felt that he had survived a disaster, and cheered subconsciously, feeling extremely grateful to the Elder of Daluo Tiangong who saved him. But the next second, puff, there was only a dull sound of a body breaking. Elder Yunnan, after hearing the cheers of the crowd, also smiled. But it was only halfway through. The spiritual light seal he waved was shattered by Gu Changqing's palm power, and he himself was directly penetrated by Gu Changqing's palm, breaking his lungs, although he still looked like a human. In fact, his 5 internal organs and dantian were completely collapsed, and his vitality was annihilated in an instant. A strong man in the perfect state of the emperor, but he was directly killed on the spot by Gu Changqing's palm. Puff! The Elder Yunnan only had time to spit out a mouthful of blood, which sprayed Yue Baifeng all over, and then he fell to the ground limply, turning into a pool of mud. The horrible aftermath directly caused Yue Baifeng to suffer serious injuries, and this injury was paid for by the life of a perfect emperor. The whole process was slow, but it was just a flash of lightning. Yue Baifeng's smile of gratitude was still on his face, and the next second he spit out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were completely dull, and his heart of Tao collapsed into countless fragments at this moment. And what made Yue Baifeng even more desperate than this? It was Gu Changqing. The next thing was that he was so calm and boundless, as if he had killed a perfect emperor. To him, it was really not worth mentioning, just like eating and drinking water. Who do you think you are? Are you worthy of talking to me? Gu Changqing's words were calm, but they contained unprecedented tyranny. Gu Changqing's words, when heard by Yue Baifeng, were like thunder, which made his collapsed Dao heart suffer new injuries and completely difficult to be reconstructed. And the cultivators watching the battle around, and even the powerful people in Daluo Tiangong, were not much better than Yue Baifeng. Looking at the dead Elder Yunnan, they could hardly believe their eyes. That was a powerful person who had reached the perfection of the Emperor realm, just like that. He was killed by Gu Changqing with one palm, and Luo Shenyue in the distant sky was completely stunned. Just now, I actually tried to challenge him. On the sea of clouds, Gu Changqing stood tall, with a transcendent temperament. In addition, his record of killing the emperor with one palm made everyone feel a sense of emotion. The sword immortal came to the world with unparalleled grace, and Luo Shenyue in the distance was dumbfounded. Her mind was full of who I was and where I was. It is true that she is a martial arts fanatic, but that does not mean she is stupid. On the contrary, Luo Shenyue has always been clear about her own strength to be able to reach this point on the road. She is infatuated with martial arts, but it does not mean that she is ignorant of the height of the world. In his eyes, the powerful man of the emperor is also an absolute senior figure, and she is far from being able to compete with him now. But now, even such a powerful man was killed by Gu Changqing with one palm. You know, the Elder Yunnan was born in Daluo Tiangong and has many unique skills of Daluo Tiangong. The strength of the battle is far beyond the reach of ordinary heavenly emperors. Even so, he still couldn't stop Gu Changqing's palm. What level is this strength? Ordinary divine emperors in the early stage may not be able to do it. What a challenge. Luo Shenyue was shocked. The palace master of Daluo Palace also frowned, staring at Gu Changqing with murderous intent in his eyes. Although this boy's strength is not that of a divine emperor, it is already close. Don't let him stay, the palace master of Daluo Palace said softly. Beside him, the deputy palace master of Yulong also nodded slightly, and there was also murderous intent in his eyes. No wonder you can destroy the Kanglan Holy Land and dare to attack the soul-binding envoy of my holy church. It is indeed extraordinary. Not far away, the soul-devouring divine emperor also narrowed his eyes slightly, and there was a dangerous light flashing in them. His thoughts were the same as those of the palace master of Daluo Palace. After seeing Gu Changqing's strength, they all had the idea of wiping him out. Fortunately, although Gu Changqing showed strong strength, it was far from enough in the eyes of the Daluo Palace master and others, just a divine emperor. Even if Gu Changqing was a monster, and his strength was comparable to that of a divine emperor in the middle stage, so what? They had 2 divine emperors in the late stage, and a pair of divine emperors in the perfect stage. With such a lineup, it would be easy to deal with Gu Changqing, right? Just at this moment, swish, a figure suddenly appeared, stepped on the sea of clouds, and came to Gu Changqing's side. The moment he appeared on the stage, he attracted the attention of the whole audience. That is, even Long Yu and Tun Hun, two divine emperors in the perfect stage, squinted their eyes at the moment the figure appeared, and a cold light flashed in their eyes. This figure was naturally Xuan Huang. However, she did not show her true appearance, but still wore a veil. After all, rebuilding the body and living another life is a big deal. Although Gu Changqing said it was okay, but Xuan Huang was still worried that if it was publicized, it would cause unnecessary trouble for Gu Changqing, and Gu Changqing did not insist and let her do it. However, even though she did not reveal her true appearance, the fluctuation of Xuan Huang's aura at this moment still amazed the audience. At this moment, although her strength has not been fully restored, but she was a figure who reached the pinnacle of the Divine Emperor in the past. The moment that the mighty aura emerged, it instantly attracted the attention of the audience, another Divine Emperor giant. The Gu family. There is another real Divine Emperor. Seeing this scene, the monks who came to watch the battle after hearing the news couldn't help but open their eyes wide. The foundation of the Gu family is beyond their imagination. I thought that one Gu Changqing was already the limit. But now, a god emperor is about to jump out. Incredible. Really incredible. All the cultivators of the Hanshin Empire were moved, and the Zhang family was even more shocked, especially Zhang Yunshan and Zhang Baiwei. They originally thought that the Gu family was doomed, but Gu Changqing could actually pull out such a trump card. It's okay. It's okay. It's just one god emperor. Even with Gu Changqing, there are only two god emperors. It can't turn the world upside down. Several Jiang family members whispered to each other, not knowing whether they were really analyzing the situation or comforting themselves. However, no one cared about their thoughts. On the sea of clouds, Gu Changqing looked at the Xuan emperor who appeared, and his heart was also a little moved. He transmitted his voice, "Fellow Taoist Xuan emperor, thank you." With Xuan emperor's strength, he can definitely leave easily at the moment. Gu Changqing, at least on the surface, was already in a dead end. So even if Emperor Zhuan left, it would be reasonable. But Emperor Zhuan still chose to stay and stand with the Gu family, even though he and Emperor Zhuan had made an agreement. But an agreement is an agreement, not an oath. Moreover, Emperor Zhuan had said that if she encountered a crisis that she could not solve, she would choose not to help and leave directly. And the current situation, for Emperor Zhuan now, it is the trouble that she cannot solve even if she dies. Apart from anything else, the Deputy Palace Master of Daluo Tiangong alone may be able to defeat Emperor Zhuan. But even so, Emperor Zhuan still chose to stand up. This friendship touched Gu Changqing's heart. No need to thank you. This is the original agreement. Later, I will hold them for you. You find a way to take your wife and clansmen and leave quickly. Emperor Zhuan spoke softly and transmitted the voice. Her tone was particularly calm, as if she had made up her mind. Her injuries have not recovered yet, and her strength is not even as good as the two palace masters of Daluo Tiangong. But if he really uses some trump cards and fights to the death, he can restore his strength to the perfection of the Divine Emperor in a short time. This strength is not enough to turn the tide, but it is definitely more than enough to buy time for the Gu family to move. And just when Emperor Zhuan spoke, everyone on the Daluo Tiangong side also came back to their senses from the shock brought by Emperor Zhuan's appearance. Looking at the pressure of the Divine Emperor emerging from Emperor Zhuan, the Palace Master of Daluo Tiangong looked at him with contempt and sneer. There was unconcealed disdain in his eyes when he looked at Gu Changqing. I thought you had some trump cards that you hadn't played yet, but it turned out to be just this ability. A mere Divine Emperor. Do you think I can protect you? As the Palace Master of Daluo said, he took a step forward and attacked Emperor Zhuan. The rest of the people did not take action. Even the soul-devouring Divine Emperor. They just quietly dispersed, surrounded Gu Changqing and Xuan Huang in the center, and blocked all their retreat routes. This is the domineering power of the Daluo Palace Master. With the blessing of the cultivation of the late stage of the Divine Queen, let him have the confidence to fight 1 against 2 and suppress Xuan Huang and Gu Changqing. Gu Dao Yu retreat. Find an opportunity? I will deal with him. Seeing this, Quen Huang's color changed slightly, and he immediately stepped forward to protect Gu Changqing behind him. But just as she was about to fight, Gu Changqing still took a step ahead of her. Leave this person to me, Dao Yu Xuan Huang. Don't worry. Gu Changqing had a smile on his lips, and his eyes looked at the Daluo Palace Master in the distance. He did not show any fear, but instead had a hint of fighting spirit that could not be concealed. In his sea of consciousness, at this moment, 4 king-level divine swords were floating and flowing, cooperating with the Juxian sword formation cultivated by Gu Changqing, and he only needed a thought to activate it. The other 3 king weapons were refined by Gu Changqing today, using the materials that his son Gu Qingchen had obtained in the secret realm. 4 king-level divine weapons were used as the formation base, and with the blessing of Gu Changqing's chaos sword body, the power of the immortal execution sword formation has been raised to an immeasurable level, not to mention that the Daluo Palace Master in front of him is only in the late stage of the Divine Queen. Even Long Yu and the soul-devouring Divine Emperor, who are at the perfect stage of the Divine Emperor, Gu Changqing can still deal with them. However, to deal with a mere Daluo Tiangong Palace Master, it is not necessary to use the killing move of the Immortal Execution Sword Formation. Since Gu Changqing got the system, he has basically never encountered an opponent who is worthy of his full efforts. And this time, facing the Daluo Palace Master who is 3 realms higher than himself. Gu Changqing has a long-lost strong desire to fight. I don't know. Without using the Juxian sword formation. What level of strength can I reach? Gu Changqing whispered softly and took a step forward. He came directly to the Lord of Daluo Palace and was going to fight against this giant in the spirit realm of the Queen of Gods with his own strength. You don't know whether to live or die. The Lord of Daluo Palace sneered, and there was a murderous intent in his eyes that could not be hidden. Since you are looking for death, then I will fulfill your wish. This knife will send you to the west. As soon as the voice fell, the Lord of Daluo Palace drew his knife like lightning, and the spiritual power condensed. The blood moon scimitar in his hand cut out a sad and beautiful moon arc, which quickly swept towards Gu Changqing. In an instant, it engulfed Gu Changqing's figure. However, Gu Changqing's breath was not instantly annihilated as everyone expected. On the contrary, when the moon arc fell on Gu Changqing, Kacha, Gu Changqing did not use any magical power or secret method. He just urged his spiritual power to create a layer of sword energy to protect his body. The blade light that was powerful enough to kill an ordinary god emperor was like a knife cutting the sword the moment it hit this layer of sword energy. Like tofu. It was easily split into 2 pieces and collapsed between heaven and earth. What?